It's May 31st, 2020. Last night there were demonstrations in 75 cities across America, including here in Los Angeles. Just a few blocks away, people were rioting and the National Guard was called in. So I usually make my living making people laugh, but I just want to talk about what's going on. I think a lot of white people are afraid to be allies in this situation, but this is exactly when we have to be, and when we have to all make our voice heard. And if we that don't completely understand the situation say something wrong or misunderstand things, we just need to apologize, learn from that, and learn how to be an ally. What has been happening, I think everyone knows this. George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis, held down and murdered by a police officer. And that's just the fuse, though. The pressure has been building in America forever. And it's just been one thing after another. George Floyd said the same thing that Eric Garner did back in 2014, I can't breathe. And that's become kind of a mantra of what it means to be a person of color in America. Just to not be able to breathe, to be suffocated by the system of systemic racism and racial profiling. And what's been helping build this pressure is that we have an administration and people in power that aren't dealing with the root of this problem. This country is built on the labor of people who were slaves and who were marginalized and never treated equally. And that's all coming to a head. So what do we do? How do we help? Well, the first thing is we need to understand people aren't going to calm down. Things aren't going to go back to normal. We aren't going to make America great again. We aren't going to get back to the good old days, because this problem has been here all along. So how do we be an ally to people of color, to marginalized peoples? We need to not be afraid to speak up. Black Lives Matter is not excluding everyone else. It's just trying to bring people up to a level where they're heard. And here's something that gets me, is that people keep saying, oh, well, there needs to be peaceful demonstrations. Peaceful, well, you know what, that's what black people have been trying to do. I know we want to ignore this. You know, white people want things to be nice, but you know what, it's not nice. There is such inequality in this country. So what we need to do is we need to call out people when they say things that marginalize people, that make them feel less than. We need to vote people in power that have equality in mind and have black rights and want to end the racial profiling in the police. We need to vote for people that want to reform the prison system. We need to make ourselves heard, all of us, because things aren't okay. We need to make sure that the officers are held accountable for murdering George Floyd. Ahmaud Arbery was just jogging through a neighborhood, and he was shot because he looked suspicious. You know what made him look suspicious is racism, is people profiling others and saying, they don't look like me, they look like problems. What are they doing in this neighborhood? You know, if people can't live in peace, then they're going to riot. Because you know what, ignorance is not bliss. Sorry, things weren't better. Things aren't better when you don't know about them. You know, the good old days were racist and ignorant, and that's maybe why they seem nice to so many white people, but black people have been encountering this kind of persecution for generations. We are a country that's built on slavery and injustice, and that's the word, justice. We need justice. They need to feel heard. They need to know when someone is held down for 9 minutes by their neck and crying out for help, and they are literally murdered in the streets, that there's going to be justice for that. And it's not about, you know, I hear so many people saying, well, what did he do? If the first thing you're saying is, what did he do to deserve that, then you don't understand the problem that is so deep and so dangerous in this country, that is literally killing hundreds of people, is having them shot in the streets. 11 times Eric Garner said, I can't breathe. And here we are, 6 years later, with George Floyd held under that officer's knee for 9 minutes, saying, I can't breathe, calling out for his mother. Now, what do we need to do to make sure this doesn't happen again and again? When police show up to these demonstrations, that makes things worse because they're the ones that are supposed to be protecting us, and they're the ones that are killing us in the streets. So what do? We have to call out our elected officials when they say things that are racist or derogatory, or, when Trump calls Nazis good people and immediately calls a guy in a hoodie a thug, when he says there's going to be, we're going to release vicious dogs and ominous weapons to people who are just trying to make their voice heard, or you want them to protest more peacefully, well, that's what people were trying to do when they took a knee at the NFL, and Mike Pence walked out of the NFL because he was offended they were doing it. People aren't being heard, and justice isn't being felt. Until we know that people are being held accountable for the violence against people of color and the systemic racism, the racial profiling, then this is going to get louder and louder and louder. We should be angry. We should all be angry that Ahmaud Arbery can't just go jogging in a neighborhood without being called out because he looks different and is shot in the street, and that Amy Cooper is just nicely asked to put her dog on a leash, and she calls the police and says she's feeling threatened by an African American man, knowing that she's weaponizing that expression because it makes her seem more like a victim, and it makes it seem like she's in danger more. People are angry. Aren't you angry? So what do? We become an ally. We speak up when we hear people saying things that are against people of color. We vote people out that are racist. We stop saying Nazis are good people. What is that? I see people on social media that are angry that during these protests people start looting or rioting, destroying property. And I understand what you're saying is people have to abide by the rule of law. And the problem is the law is supposed to protect us and serve us all equally. Well, it's not serving us all equally. There's an inequality that needs to be addressed, and it's not being addressed, which is why the same protests and the same problems are happening again and again. The protest is just a symptom of what's going on, which is why we keep having people killed by police officers disproportionately toward people of color, which is why we keep having these protests and these riots. This has to be addressed. There has to be justice. People have to know that the people are held accountable for their actions, that the law serves all of us and doesn't serve us with privilege more than others. Instead of making America great again, can't we work together to make a new country, to come together to be better? I don't have anything funny to say. Last night was filled with sirens and helicopters all night long. And the air is filled with anger right now. It seems like we're moving toward another civil war. And which side are we going to be on?